So the next country that we are going to focus on is Cyprus. And to that end, we have here Panayiotis Elia, who holds two masters in labor law and industrial relations and in commercial law, and is pursuing a PhD on the pension reform in Cyprus, Greece, Ireland, and Portugal in the context of the economic and financial policy memoranda. He worked for advocacy organizations. He worked for an advocacy organization representing social protection institutions and led policy and advocacy activities on issues such as the IORP2 directive, the coordination of social security systems, and the adequacy and financial sustainability of pensions. Mr. Elia has collaborated with relevant European Union institutions, and his employment and social affairs attaché at the permanent representation of the Republic of Cyprus to the European Union are responsible for social protection and social security coordination. Panayiotis, thank you very much for being here with us today. We are very much looking forward to your knowledge on Cyprus. So please, the floor is yours.
Dear Francisco, dear everyone, thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to attend the conference, and thank you very much for organizing this conference, because I think it's extremely important to dive into the specificities of the national pension schemes and to assess the differences across these schemes, since all of them, they are based on the different industrial relations, but as well as on the difference of the on cultural differences based on across the different countries. This being said, I think that more or less, and also from what we have seen from the different presentations, but also from what is there from the literature, but also from the policy side, the challenges are more or less similar. This being, for instance, on sustainability, on coverage, on having access to the scheme, on providing also adequate pensions. And of course, no one solution fits all. This being said, I think it's also very timely to have this discussion on pensions, not only for the national level discussions, since a lot of countries, there are currently ongoing reforms, but also at European level, since currently there is this ongoing discussion on how to enhance supplementary pensions. But as well as, even though the EU has very limited competences on the first pillar pensions, of course, we have there the coordination of social security roles, which is very important for this element of free movement of workers. Now, in terms of my presentation, thank you also for the slides. Now, in terms of the presentation, I will provide an overview of mostly the first and second pillar pension schemes in Cyprus, and then I will also dedicate some part of this presentation on the pension structural reforms after the adoption of the economic adjustment program in 2013, but also on some reforms that occurred as an aftermath of the financial crisis in 2009, since they had a huge impact on the architecture of the Cypriot pension system. Then I will move with providing some more information on the overview of the institutions of occupational retirement provisions and the current rules applicable in Cyprus, and then I will conclude with my observations on the future of the three-pillar pension scheme in Cyprus. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of the evolution of the Cypriot old age pension system, this has been very gradual and incremental. Historically, the public old age pension, it was introduced as part of the first social insurance scheme, which was introduced in January 1957. And interestingly, this existed even before, prior to the independence of Cyprus, which was in 1960. Regardless of the introduction of the system was very limited in scope and substantive protection, as it actually excluded certain categories of workers from compulsory insurance. This being, for instance, the self-employed and the agricultural workers, who constituted back then the majority of the country's workforce. Also, the scheme, it provided only flat rate benefits based on uniform contribution payments. Still, since its first implementation, after 7 years, there was the first reform that occurred in 1964. This reform, it extended the scope of pensions protected by the system, which subsequently, as a result, put the system under financial pressure and has periodically also led to a reduction of the pension benefits, which in turn boosted the popularity of supplementary occupational pension schemes. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms of the right to social security, this is actually codified in Article 9 of the Constitution of Cyprus, so the one that became applicable in 1960. But following actually the reform that took place in 1964, there was another significant reform that occurred in 1980. And actually this reform, it introduced the supplementary earning-related insurance contributions and adjusted the calculation of pension benefits. So taking on from the 1980 reform, today the pension scheme in Cyprus, it offers a standard level of protection against financial risk in old age, and this is achieved via mandatory insurance in the single statutory pension scheme. Nevertheless, as it is mentioned there, in our scheme, like in general, the Social Security scheme, we have the social insurance benefit. And in addition to that, we have the social assistance and support, which is a non-contributory means-tested aid. And then moving beyond of the pension schemes, we also have, since 2019, the universal national health coverage for all citizens and legal residents. Nevertheless, jumping back on the current scheme in Cyprus and how it actually operates, the current pension scheme. Actually, the current scheme, it has integrated the earlier flat rate scheme into a modified structure, which actually includes supplementary earning-related benefits. So this is being the basic component, so original flat rate benefits. And then we also have the earning-related component, which supplements this amount, and it is based on insured income. And as was mentioned before, outside this, we also have these targeted measures, which are mostly means tested and provide social assistance. Next slide, please. Thank you. In this slide, I'm providing an overview of the current of the national pension system in Cyprus, and the idea here is to provide an overview of the different elements of the pension scheme. In terms of the first pillar, like the most strong element and the key reference is the so-called general social insurance scheme. So as was mentioned before, the general social insurance scheme, it is a pay-as-you-go compulsory social insurance scheme, and it covers every person gainfully employed in Cyprus. It is funded equally by employers and employees, and there is also another top-up contributions paid by the government. I will elaborate more on this later. And as was described before, the pension provided by the general social insurance scheme, it comprises both a basic and a supplementary component. In addition to this, we also have the social pension scheme, which this is a non-contributory scheme, and it provides minimum pension to residents of Cyprus who are more than 65 years old, and they have a limited pension income. if their income is below the level of the social pension. Of course, to be able to receive the scheme, it is also important to fulfill some criteria in terms of residence in Cyprus. Then on top, which also still falls under the General Social Insurance Scheme, we have the additional minimum income protection, which is a non-contributory means-tested scheme. And there we also find other allowances, such as the Easter allowances or other guaranteed minimum income allowances. Now, in terms of the second pillar, which does not actually cover a huge number of the population currently, the most important schemes are the ones that to be found in the public sector. So, for instance, this being the government employees pension scheme, which is actually currently closed since 2011. Nevertheless, we also have some other schemes for the semi-government sector, and also some recent schemes that they were introduced in 2022. In addition to this, we also have some schemes for the private sector. This being either through mandatory collective agreements, but this is very limited in scope. And we also have some company that they set up their own provident funds, but this being voluntarily. In addition to this, we also have the third pillar, the pension, which is individual insurance plans. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms now of the overview of the statutory pension, the pension system is governed by Social Security Law 59/2010, and as was mentioned before, it has these two main components: the pay-as-you-go component, and also the social pension scheme. Just to add, in terms of the social pension scheme, that this is paid 13 times per year, and it is set at the 81% of the full basic pension. This is estimated the amount is around 336 euros. Next slide, please. In terms now of the criteria to have access to the scheme, like to the statutory pension scheme, the statutory pension age under the General Social Insurance Scheme in Cyprus is 65, and this is the same for both men and women. And the key element to be able to have access to the scheme is that someone needs to be insured for at least 180 weeks. Early retirement is possible from age of 63. Of course, there we have some very strict criteria of how one can have access to this scheme, and this is related to the number of weeks at work, but also to the insurance points that an individual has gained. Nevertheless, to discourage early retirement, financial disincentives are applied in the form of an actuarial adjustment that reduces the statutory pension. So, for instance, while postponing retirement beyond 65 increases the pension by 0.5% per month up to the age of 68, on the contrary, early retirement, it actually decreases the pension by 0.5 per month. So let's say if someone is 63 years old and wishes to retire, but does not fulfill the criteria that are necessary to retire at the age of 63, it will have this penalty of 12%, since if you count 24 months, like for 0.5%, it will add up to this 12%. Similar to other member states in the EU, but also globally, some special early retirement provisions apply to hazardous occupations. So, for instance, minors, and this is possible from the age of 58. Recently, we also had some reforms in Cyprus promoting gender equality, now allowing men to receive also the survivor's pension, because since until 2018, men who lost their wives, they were not able to receive the widow's pensions. Still, there are some disparities in the law there, because it only applies for the situations that someone lost their wife from 2018 afterwards. So before that, the men are not eligible to receive this survivor's pension. Next slide, please. In terms now on how the pension system is funded, the General Social Insurance Scheme, how it is funded, as it was mentioned before, this is equally funded by employees and employers. The current amount is 8.3%, and this amount it is topped up by 4.9% from the government. So the total contribution rate is 21.5%. And there we also have some insurable earnings cap. In terms of the self-employed, the approach is similar. Nevertheless, the self-employed contributes 15.6%, and then is the government topping up 4.9%. In addition to this, as was mentioned before, we also have these additional support measures if someone receives a very low income pension. Next slide, please. In terms of diving more on the two key components of the General Social Insurance Schemes, as mentioned, this is the basic pension and also the supplementary pension, which is based on insurance points and the contribution period. In terms of the basic pension, this equals to 60% of average basic insurable earnings. So more or less, this will be the same for all workers, this amount of 60%, since one needs to fulfill this criteria of 180 weeks to be insured. So the amount there is more or less the same for everyone. Still, this amount, it can increase to 80, 90, and 100%, depending if someone has 1, 2, or 3 dependents. Now, in terms of the supplementary pension equals to 1.5% of the total insurance points accumulated. And interestingly, the basic pension is indexed annually to basic earnings growth, and supplementary pension is indexed to inflation. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms now of the insurance points in Cyprus, the insurance points model is a central concept for determining entitlement to insurance benefits, including pensions. The calculation of insurance point is directly linked to an individual's annual insurable earnings, so meaning the income, and this is related to the fixed amount of the basic insurable earnings set each year by law. Actually, the codification and the process for converting the insurable earnings into insurance points is found in Article 19 of Law 59/2010. And 1 point, it accumulates to 1 basic insurance. The additional point then, it accumulates into the supplementary insurance. Article 20 is the article that sets the method for determining basic insurable earnings, and then it is up to the Council of Ministers and up to the decree that they publish to define the exact amount. So, for instance, for 2024, the weekly and annual amounts of basic insurable earnings were set at 213 euros.54, and for the annual amount, this was 11,104 euros. To put this into practice, so if you have a worker, if you have an individual that has earned 11,104 euros in 2024, then this is 1 insurance point. If the amount is 22,200, 2008, then this is 2 points, meaning one basic and one supplementary amount. In the case that someone, for instance, has earned 18,000 euros, then again, you have the same approach. So it is one insurance point and then the additional amount. So for instance, 0.8 will be considered as a supplementary amount. This is very important since at the end, like when someone comes to the age of retirement, he needs to add up this insurance point to determine the amount that is eligible. Next slide, please. Diving into the occupational pension schemes now, beyond the general social insurance scheme, some employees and the professional groups receive supplementary retirement income through occupational schemes. The most important one for the public sector was the government employee pension scheme, which provides pensions to central government staff, for instance, teachers and armed force. Nevertheless, since 2011, this scheme is closed. Some other occupational and provident fund schemes has been created over the years, and this mostly covers also workers employed in the semi-public sector and offered additional retirement benefits, especially since the pension scheme for the government employees has been closed. A big enhancement in the supplementary pension for people working in the semi-public sector and also the public sector is that since 2022 we had the occupational plan for pension benefits of public and wider public sector employees being introduced, and this applies actually for workers that have been employed from 2011 onwards. So regardless if this came into force of 2022, the period of 2011 onwards is taken into consideration. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms now of the private sector, we also have some self-employed professionals that they have their own defined benefit occupational pension scheme. So for instance, this will be the lawyers and the doctors. But in addition, we have many small provident funds who also operate in the private sector, and this is funded voluntarily by employers and employees. So the voluntary nature, it applies in cases where no collective agreements are in place. So the provident funds, they play a limited role in retirement income, since they usually pay a lump sum amount. Next slide, please. Moving on now to the aftermath of the implementation of the economic adjustment program in 2013, as well as on some reforms that already took place from 2009 as a result of the crisis. The key objectives of this reform was to ensure that the pension system is viable until 2060 and limit the fiscal subsidy to the general social insurance scheme under the Memorandum of Understanding. So the key objectives have been to contain pension spending growth, to strengthen long-term financial sustainability, and to limit fiscal subsidy for current and future pensions. So now, if we take this like into specific periods, two different waves can be identified from 2009 to 2017, with very similar measures as will be presented now taking place. In view of the post-2011 reform, under the Memorandum of Understanding, it focused on reducing pension level in public and private sectors and containing the general social insurance scheme pension expenditure. Now, in terms of the main measures as a result of this, This has been, for instance, the introduction of the retirement penalty of 0.5% per month. It has been the gradual increase in retirement age and minimum pensionable age by 6 months per year. Also, the automatic adjustment of retirement age every 5 years is now based on life expectancy. And we have also the higher employee contributions for the existing participants of some of the schemes. And also, as was already mentioned, we also had some schemes that they have been closed. Next slide, please. Thank you. In terms now of the era between 2009 to 2013, again, the major measures that were driven by fiscal sustainability concerns. Nevertheless, despite the reforms and from reports that has been done, especially under the pension adequacy report for Cyprus, the social security pension adequacy remained largely unaffected. The 2013 implementation of the economic adjustment program, it also negatively impacted occupational second pillar pensions in 3 ways. New entrants to public and semi-government services were affected. Several small provident funds that were dissolved, and importantly, public trust in financial arrangements declined significantly. So this had a huge impact in terms of trusting and promoting supplementary pensions. Then in the era between 2014 to 2017, limited reforms took place due to the extended reforms that have already been applied in the year before. Maybe the most important element there to mention is that there has been a 0.81 increase in basic pension rate from January 2017, in addition to standard indexation. And of course, this is to support the low-income pensioners. Next slide, please. In terms now of what has occurred between 2017 to 2020, again, only minor adjustments occurred in the social security pension system. Nevertheless, some key updates is the extension of the widow's pension rights to men under the general social insurance scheme, as has been mentioned before, and also the even more increase in income support for low-income pensioners. The most important element that has been took force in 2019, and this is as a result of the reform that took place in 2009, is the fact that now employees and employers, they have experienced an increase in their contribution, so from 7.8% to 8.3%. And this is also the case for the government, since now the contribution rate from the government, it has increased from 4.6 to 4.9%. A similar approach has been also followed for the self-employed workers. This schedule increase in the contribution rate, it will actually occur every 5 years until 2039 to ensure system sustainability. Next slide, please. In terms now of the key reforms between July 2020 and July 2023, the most important element is that the new legislation has been implemented, extending access to occupational pensions for all public sector employees, and also the introduction of a simplified income support scheme for low-income pensioners. Precisely in terms of this new legislation, Law 210/2022, it established a new occupational pension plan following long social dialogue and among ministries and unions. This law, it applies to public sector employees hired or appointed after 1st of October of 2011. And interestingly, also, the permanent employees appointed for the first time after the laws enactment. In addition to this, semi-public sector organizations with their own provident funds are now allowed to join this new plan and transform their contributions. The scheme is funded equally by the employees and the employer, being 5% each. So in total, this is a contribution of 10%. When someone reaches their retirement age, is eligible to receive two types of benefits, being the lump sum or the occupational pension based on average lifetime salary. Next slide, please. Now moving to the last slide in terms of what has occurred after the adoption of the economic adjustment program and what is currently the situation. Actually, currently there is still a discussion on pension reform with plans for the government to end by 2025, but this will need to be postponed since currently in Cyprus, like the social dialogue and the efforts of the government has been placed on the indexation of salaries. So it actually shifted and postponed a bit the discussion on pension reforms. Still, the main objective of this reform will be to improve pension adequacy, especially for low-income retirees, and also ensure long-term financial sustainability. To be able to proceed with the reforms, the government is collaborating also with the International Labour Organization for the expert advice. And in terms of what it is expected for the supplementary and personal pension schemes, it is expected that the government will introduce more financial incentives for insured individuals, as well as strengthen the supervision and management standards for pension and provident funds. And also, a lot of the reforms will be initiated as part of the Cypriot recovery and resilience plan. The public debate it focuses mostly on the potentially reducing the actuarial adjustment factors for the early general social insurance scheme pensioners. And this receives a lot of strong support from the trade unions. Next slide, please. Now moving on and saying some more details about the occupational pension schemes and the current law number 10/2020. Actually, this law it repealed the prior legislation on supplementary pensions and it reshapes the regulation of occupational pensions in Cyprus. The law is more or less a translation of the EU IOP2 directive, since it implements totally the IOP2 directive. Just to note then that these reform goals that are to be found under the IOP2 directive are aligned also with the new occupational pension law in Cyprus, this being to strengthen the adequacy and the security of pension funds, to enhance governance and supervision, and to promote market consolidation by creating fewer and larger pension plans. Also, in terms of the pension adequacy, several safeguards have been introduced. This being to create more protection for the members of these schemes, and also to create stricter rules in terms of dissolution of these occupational provident funds. The reform it has marked a major step towards the alignment with EU standards and improved pension governance. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the administration and operation of IOPS and the impact of the new law on these schemes, it actually has some key impact in terms of their governance and key functions. So For instance, in terms of the risk management, the IOPS are obliged to establish a risk management function with clear responsibilities covering all risks, including financial, actuarial, operational, and sustainability risks. Also, we have this chapter on the risk and financial management. So, for instance, in terms of investment policy, the IOPS are required to implement a clear investment policy that considers all relevant risks and that these align with the IOPS objectives. As was mentioned before, and in the form of providing more information and more protection to the members, now the IOPS are responsible to provide members with more information about their scheme, as well as about performing ongoing monitoring and reporting. It is also now more clear in terms of the supervision of these schemes and the supervisory authority of Cyprus. It is under the competence of the Ministry of Labour, but we have a specific supervisor supervising this the IOPS. And in terms of the oversight, the IOPS are subject to a risk-based and forward-looking supervisory approach, and with an emphasis on transparency and information exchange, in particular for cross-border activities. And for this time, this is also highly relevant now in the case of Cyprus, since we have the creation also of the second pan-European pension product, which has its base in Cyprus. Next slide, please. In terms now of the numbers of the pension funds and of the pension funds, and also in terms of the definition of the pension fund, this is to be found in Article 2 of Law 10/2020, and we have there very clear distinctions, which is actually between the provident funds and the pension funds. So, in terms of the provident fund, this refers to an IOP that manages a defined contribution pension plan and which provides retirement benefits as either a lump sum payment or a periodic payment for a fixed duration of lifetime. And it also refers to a provident fund that guarantees a specific lump sum or a fixed return of its investment. On the contrary, the pension fund are those funds that they provide and defined benefit pension plan and pays retirement benefits in the form of periodic payments, or a combination of a periodic payment and a lump sum. In Cyprus, we also have some insurance contracts, but we will not elaborate in this presentation, since the focus is on the pension funds and the provident funds. According to the latest statistics from the supervisor, as was published on the 28th of May 2025, the number of active registered IOPS, it totals to the number of 614. This being the major majority, like 535 being provident funds, so offering the defined contribution pension plan, and only 79 pension funds, so providing the defined benefit scheme. In addition to this, we also have some IOPS who are in the process of changing, and this amounts to a number of 88. Next slide, please. In terms now of some more data, in Cyprus, the easiest way to collect data for policy aspect, but also for academia purposes, it's through the private sector. So, for instance, last year, Aon carried out a research on the retirement pension plans, and it has provided the following information. That in terms of the second pillar coverage, that in Cyprus we have a total workforce of 500,000 people, significantly around 70%, more precisely 67%, they do not enjoy any coverage under occupational pension. Only an amount of 10% are covered by occupational pension in the public sector. And then we have a 19% in the private sector and only 4% in the semi-government sector. In terms of the total assets under management in the second pillar, this amounts to 3.9 billion euros. From this amount, the biggest amount, it falls under the provident funds, so 39%. Then we also have 22% for the pension funds. We also have 20% under the multi-employer pension funds, which is significantly rising also over the years. 16% is dedicated to the company provident funds, and then only a very small amount of 3%, it is for the assets under management managed by insurance companies. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of some more interesting data that is provided by the research carried out by Aon on the retirement supplementary pension. The research covers occupational pension schemes of 418 companies. This represents more than 47,000 members. Interestingly, the findings of the research is that 66% of the total pension plan assets are on average allocated to fixed income investments. So this means mainly to cash and bonds. Then an amount of 34% of the total assets are on average allocated to growth investment, mainly equities. And in terms of the choice of investment choice, 19% of the members who participated in the survey have the option to make individual investment choices. Then 100% of the provident funds, excluding multi-company funds, they follow a uniform investment strategy without offering individual investment options. And then 60% of the programs that provide choice of investments offer 4 to 5 investment options to their members. Important to say also that from this survey and from these 418 companies, 80% of this, they include auto-enrollment to occupational pension schemes. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the contributions from each party on the occupational pension schemes may be either the same or different. So, for instance, you might have an employer that contributes 5%, while the employee contributes 3% of their gross salary. So there are no specific rules governing these percentages, not any defined minimum or maximum contribution limits. Still, according to data from the supervisor, the average fund in Cyprus has a combined employer and employee contribution of 5%. So in total, this amounts to 10%. In most cases, it is the employer that determines the standard contribution rate and includes it as part of the employee benefit package within the employment contract. Of course, the situation may vary whether the occupational pension is mandatory under the collective agreements, such as, for instance, in the construction sector. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of the taxation, but not only limited to occupational pensions, we have recognized expenses eligible for income tax in Cyprus. So these are contributions to the general healthcare system and the social security. We also have some limited to 1.5% of earnings to private medical insurance premiums. Also, the life insurance premiums are limited to 7% of the insured amount. And the pension and provident fund contributions are limited to 10% of their earnings. Diving a bit more on the occupational pensions, importantly, the contribution made by both the employer and the employee to provident funds are tax deductible, as was mentioned before, up to 10% of each member's taxable income. The investment returns of provident funds are subject to a special defense contribution of 3%. Investments and the withdrawals from funds are fully exempt from income tax. Then the total percentage of taxable income that may be exempt to the fund contributions and other insurance deductions is approximately 20%, with an expected increase to 25%. This being, for instance, a financial incentive to promote the occupational pension schemes. In general, the provident and pension fund management fees are generally low, and many funds do not charge administrative or maintenance fees. Next slide, please. Now, in terms of access and having the transparent information to pension information, a provisional calculation of the statutory pension in Cyprus can be made using the special digital tool, the so-called Ψηφιακή Πλατφόρμα Ariadne of the government. And this tool allows individuals to enter their insurance detail and obtain a forecast estimated of their old age statutory pension amount. This was actually only very recently implemented, and the way that it is actually a document that shows an overview of the year worked and the insurance points gained each year. And then it also provides the approximate amount of old age statutory pension. So to give a concrete example, for instance, if someone has worked in 2000 has worked and has earned their 10,000 euros, and the amount to have one insurance point was 10,000, then next to 2,000 you will have the number 1, because it allocates to one insurance point. If someone has worked, for instance, the same year and has earned 22,000, then it will be the number 2 written next to this. And needless to say that, of course, the amount it is based on the council decree decision that is made in terms of how to equalize the insurance, the income gained with the insurance point. Moving now to my concluding remarks, and the next slide. So, in terms of the future of the 3-pillar pension scheme in Cyprus, and throughout this presentation, what has been observed is that the first pillar pension scheme is under the very strict rules in terms of the economic adjustment programs, but also it is under financial constraints, like to limit the spending on this general social insurance scheme. A bit of a similar situation under the second pillar. Since the economic adjustment programs, they also had an impact on the second pillar. So, for instance, we had the closure of some schemes. Okay, we also had a positive element has been the introduction of the new scheme of 2022. Nevertheless, a negative element in terms of putting more pressure on the second pillar is also the fact that we do not see in Cyprus the rise of collective agreements recently, and also we see a lot of pension funds closing down. In contrast, we see an increase in the third pillar and the so-called individualization of pensions, and we also have the encouragement of private savings. But we also have this encouragement of savings through the supplemental schemes, but this is mostly not through collective agreements, but it's mostly through the individual, through the voluntary individual decision of each employer. And with this, just to conclude, I think that in the future we are moving more towards a two-pillar scheme where we have the first pillar and also an increase in the second pillar. But it will be interesting to see whether the upcoming reforms and the financial incentives of the government will encourage the creation of more occupational pension schemes, and as such the enhancement of the second pillar, the pension scheme. Thank you very much, and much looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Panayiotis, for this very interesting presentation. Everything was very clear, and I think thanks so much. So we already have one question from the audience. Let me read it to you. So regarding the supplementary systems, do you consider that current data collection and publication practices, for example, by supervisory authorities or pension providers, are sufficient to support informed policymaking? What improvements would you recommend?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I mean, in terms of data collection, this is mostly to be found like some references to annual reports prepared by the Ministry of Labour and Social Insurance and the Ministry of Finance. And official statistics statistical data on supplementary pensions are limited. And also the integration of data across different pension types, plans and providers is not fully established. So as a result, this leaves a big gap between of what is there in terms of the data and what could have been available to them to supporting fully informed policy making. So since also a lot of data it's only available to the private actors. Nevertheless, in terms of the general social insurance and government employee pension schemes, it's easier to collect data there. And for instance, what is very informative is the data that is provided at the EU level for this pension adequacy report that is published every 3 years. So one suggestion could be to proceed with similar practices also on supplementary pensions. Nevertheless, what is not easy, in my view, is the fact that the supplementary pension, there you have very different vehicles, you have very different pension schemes, and it is very hard in terms of administrative burden. It is also very hard because maybe these pension funds, they do not have in-house the data. And one element that needs to be considered is not to add additional burden on these schemes. So in terms, nevertheless, of promoting the data collection, you could build specific templates depending on the type of the pension scheme. Of course, take advantage of the digitalization and collect data. Also, now we also see that with the new law, more transparency must need to be in place, and information to members need to be passed on. So this could be now more easily be collected. Yes, another way forward could be to foster better the collaboration among the supervisory authorities and the ministries, but also enhance the right environment to communicate also with the actors, with the industry that actually has the data. But a good starting point could be to build on what is there, like on a European level, because of course the European level, it relies on national level to collect the data.
Thank you very much. I don't know if we have any additional questions from the audience. No, I think there are no questions. Okay, so thanks so much. It's been great to have you here. Thanks for joining. Thanks for your explanations, and hope you can enjoy the rest of the seminar. And thanks so much.
Thank you, Francisco. It was a pleasure. Yes.
Thank you.